My wife filed for divorce after her friends convinced her that being with rich men was the ultimate lifestyle. Now she wants to leave me behind to chase a life she thinks she deserves. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, Reddit story, who is 42 years old, and I, 44, moved because of her new job. She had been offered a senior management position at a company she had applied to without my knowledge. The reason she did it was because she knew I would never agree to move. We had been together for 12 years, married for 10, and we have 8-year-old twins. Both our families are here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, it has been very difficult for our family because my father's health hasn't been good, and we always fear the moment we lose him. Naturally, as his only son, I want to be here for him and also for my mother. Therefore, I didn't want to move. After my father's diagnosis, I thought Emma would understand what was happening, but instead, she told me I was being too sensitive and that I couldn't keep rejecting job opportunities out of state and expect her to do the same just because my father was sick. Before my father got ill, we had actually been planning to move because she wanted a change of pace. But after my father's diagnosis, I told her it would no longer be possible for me. She tried to understand at first, but gradually, over the last year or so, she began to feel very restless, and we had been fighting quite a bit over this. She wanted to move because she felt stuck here, and I couldn't think about moving while my father was in such a condition, especially since it would also mean leaving my mother to deal with everything alone. Even if I had siblings, I wouldn't have been able to leave because my conscience wouldn't have allowed it. I tried to explain this to Emma, but she refused to see my point of view, and I felt like she was being selfish, while she thought I was the selfish one. Then, earlier this year, one day she came home from work and told me she had applied for a well-paying job at a company out of state and had gotten the job. That shocked me, and I wanted to be happy for her, but I just couldn't because she hadn't told me anything about this application or this job. I was in a bit of shock, so I just congratulated her and didn't say anything that day. I remember we had an argument because she didn't think I was happy enough for her, even though it was a big deal. I have to admit, it was a good job with a decent salary. However, it upset me that she hadn't even thought about needing to talk to me about it before applying. She said she didn't even think she would get the job, but now that she had it, she was thinking about moving and wanted me to go with her. She wanted to relocate our entire family, knowing how I felt about it. So we ended up fighting about it, and it was one of our worst fights. It got so bad that she ended up leaving to stay with her parents for a few days, and we had no contact during those days. I actually thought she was going to file for divorce and end this, but then she came back home, and we ended up deciding that we were going to try to work things out between us because we still had the kids and we couldn't let them down. At that time, I thought it could still work with her because I didn't want to leave this marriage. I was sure that I loved her, and she told me she loved me too, so she wanted it to work. But she also didn't want to give up on her dreams. So after many discussions, we decided that she would take the job and I would stay here. She told me she would try to travel back and forth as often as she could so we could make this work. We had no other choice but to go for a long-distance marriage for now, since neither of us was ready to give up on the other. It was hard for me to accept, but I had to, at least for a while, until we could decide what we wanted to do in the future. So she left, and she started coming home every other weekend. Even then, she could only spend 2 days with us and take a flight back on Sunday afternoon since she had to be back for work on Mondays. It was exhausting for her, and I knew that, but there was nothing I could do since she had agreed to this arrangement. Over time, I guess she started resenting me, and her attitude toward me worsened. We had promised each other that we were going to try to make this work, but every time I tried to call her during the week, she was always very harsh with me, and we would end up arguing about something. It got to the point where it seemed like she didn't even want to talk to me. Instead of calling her on my own, I started waiting for her to call me first, and then we began talking less and less. Even when we did talk, it was always very cold and strange, and I didn't know what to think about it. Finally, after being away for almost 4 months, she came home one weekend and brought divorce papers with her. At that point, things were really tense between us. She told me she couldn't take it anymore. When she came back that weekend, we hadn't spoken for almost 6 days straight due to the argument we had the last time we spoke. I wanted to find a reason not to divorce, but I couldn't think of anything because the last fight we had was when she had really brought up the idea of separating and ending the marriage for good. I should have seen it coming for months. Not only had we been fighting, but she had also been getting closer to a high school friend. This friend, let's call her Melissa, was not a good person and was an even worse influence. Emma had always been good friends with Melissa, and that woman had even been a bridesmaid at our wedding. But I never liked her because she always gave off a strange vibe. From what I knew about her, she was a total gold digger, And she was always after rich, married men so she wouldn't have to commit to them but still get the benefits of being with a rich man. She even bragged about it, as if what she was doing wasn't despicable enough. When I used to mention her behavior to Emma, she would tell me it was her personal choice and we shouldn't judge her. That was quite irritating. So eventually, I stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore that friendship altogether. Eventually, it became easier because, after Melissa moved away and Emma became busy with work and the kids, they naturally distanced from each other. Anyway, I knew Melissa had also been living in the same state with her child for a couple of years, as she had moved after her second divorce, probably to look for new prey. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in the same state, she reconnected with Melissa, who was the one to introduce her to the city and help her with the move and everything else. I hoped that maybe Melissa had mellowed out after all these years, but she was still the same strange person. I didn't feel comfortable with Emma being so close to Melissa again, but she was the only friend Emma had there, so I couldn't even say anything about it. In the months that Emma had been there, she had told me that Melissa had been very supportive of her as she was alone and that she had even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This group of people that Melissa had introduced Emma to was quite strange because, from what I remember, it was a group of 3 or 4 women who were all single mothers. They had met through Facebook and had some sort of support group on the platform. According to what Emma had told me, these women had been with men, had children with them, but for various reasons, their partners had left them, and now they were raising their children alone. The only support they received was child support. However, it wasn't as sad as it sounds because most of the women Melissa got along with were like her. They had gone after very wealthy men, had affairs with them, gotten pregnant, and then, when these men decided to stay with their wives and families, these women managed to secure a large amount of child support. This sustained their lifestyle. It wasn't just support for them, it was hush money, as I suppose these men didn't want their affairs to reach their wives. It was very common for all of them to have some kind of online business that no one really cared about, but they were self-employed, and wanted people to believe they were doing everything on their own. In reality, they were running a scam and prided themselves on calling themselves independent women who had all the freedom in the world to live by their own rules while living off the money of men who had been foolish enough to fall into their traps. Emma found it funny, but I found it disgusting, and I didn't think it was a good idea for her to socialize with them. However, she kept defending her friends, telling me that she had met them personally and that they were all really nice women. Since we were already fighting over so many things, I didn't want to fight about that too, so I didn't say anything. But then, in the last fight we had before she filed for divorce, she told me she really admired Melissa's strength because, even without the help of any man, she was brilliantly raising her 2 kids on her own. I dismissively ended the call and told her that anyone who made that much money from getting pregnant after an affair with rich men was probably taking good care of the kids, since they weren't their children but a lottery ticket for them. That led to a huge fight between us. The frustration had been building for months, and that day, that small disagreement was enough to trigger both of our anger. We started cursing at each other, telling each other exactly how much we hated the situation, and we just blamed each other. At one point, she said that if we were going to fight like this all the time, it was probably better that we each go our own way, and then she hung up the phone. I thought she didn't mean it and would call me to apologize, but that never happened. I was also very upset with her, so I didn't bother contacting her either. That weekend, she showed up with divorce papers, and I decided to go ahead with the process because I couldn't find a reason to stay with her either. We had tried to make it work, but unfortunately, we couldn't. Even the kids, who we were supposedly staying together for, hardly ever saw us together, and when we were together, we weren't happy. So, instead of letting them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple since there's no waiting period in our state, and we only had to split our joint assets, which was fairly straightforward. I kept the house and the kids, since she didn't want to take them with her right now, and said that for now, we could continue with the arrangement of her coming back here every week to see them. We had been sharing the cost of raising them anyway, so we continued doing that. Once they were a little older, we would let them decide what they wanted to do. It wasn't convenient for either of us, but we didn't want to fight for custody, as we believed our children deserved both of us in their lives. As for the house, we had a verbal agreement that we would sell it in a few years, and when it sold, we would split the money. The divorce was finalized about a month ago, and I didn't think she would want to talk to me after that because, even while we were going through the divorce process, we hardly had anything to talk about outside of meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything had been finalized, I was trying to move on, even though it actually felt like nothing had changed since we were still following the same routine. Life was definitely going to be quite different for me now that I was no longer married to Emma. My kids were also very confused about what was going on, so I had to explain to them that their mother and I were no longer together, although nothing had exactly changed. Last night, she decided to call me again so that we could work things out between us and give the relationship another chance. Apparently, she had made a big mistake and wanted to reverse the divorce. I could tell she had been crying and was quite hysterical on the call. She started ranting about how she had unintentionally idealized the lifestyle Melissa and her friends were living because of that group. She hadn't mentioned it to me earlier because she knew how I felt about Melissa, but after the last fight we had, she had talked to her group of friends, and they told her to go for the divorce. Initially, she had been skeptical, but they convinced her, so she spoke to a lawyer they had recommended. But it's been a month since then, and she's tried literally everything to move on, like dating apps, blind dates, and going out almost every night, but has only ended up having casual encounters. This has just made her feel pathetic because, at least with me, even when we were fighting, she knew that I loved her, and she loved me. Now, she's truly alone, and more than anything, she also misses the kids. Her friends told her this would pass, but she hasn't been able to shake the loneliness and guilt after the divorce. Additionally, her company had been doing quite well when she joined, but it has had several pay cuts since then. Apparently, they had exaggerated how well they were doing to get her to join the company, and her current income doesn't match what she had initially been offered. Not just her, everyone at the company has been going through the same thing. They keep telling people that things will get better if they keep working hard, but she believes it's just to keep the employees. That's another reason why she wants to get back with me. She said she really wanted me to consider reversing the divorce decision because she just misses her family and what her life used to be. But after she finished talking and explaining her situation to me, I felt furious with her because I couldn't believe she had allowed her immoral friends to convince her to divorce. I had always warned her about Melissa, and I had made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after she moved, but she never listened to me, and now they turned out to be the reason why she ended up making the decision she did. It had been her own mistake. I could have been understanding, but the fact that she decided to listen to people I hated really bothered me. The audacity of calling me and starting to cry about all these things as if it had all been very easy for me just enraged me. I ended up exploding at her and told her that now she had to fend for herself because I wasn't going to help her. Despite everything, I had tried my best to make this marriage work. I'm not just talking about the last few months, but since my father got sick, I had been fighting for our marriage relentlessly, and for a while, she did too. But she had been incredibly selfish in the past few years, and that's how we ended up here, divorced. The least she could have done while she was away was try to understand my feelings and my situation. Instead, she let herself be influenced by friends that she knew I didn't like. I told her she wasn't a teenager anymore, and a juvenile excuse like her friends influencing her to make bad decisions wasn't going to work with me. She wasn't coming home drunk to her parents. This was a very different situation, and it had affected my life and even the kids. Now, just because she's uncomfortable, she wants to reverse the divorce? First of all, of course, that's not how it works, and second of all, even if it could work, I wouldn't do it. I was really upset about everything she had just told me before that. I just couldn't hold back. So, I told her that if she was really feeling so lonely and guilty, then she should ask her friends for help. I'm sure if they were the ones who encouraged her to file for divorce, they would care enough to help her out financially if she's not doing well and also support her emotionally. What also upset me a lot was the fact that she basically confessed that she had been having casual encounters with random people over the past month after our divorce. Technically, she was single, so she could do whatever she wanted, but it made me really uncomfortable and depressed because I felt like she had devalued what we shared over the last 12 years. So, I told her that I didn't want her back in my life, especially after everything she had just told me, and that I was going to make sure the kids stayed with me because I wasn't sure if she was a good influence for them. She started crying even more and told me she was willing to do whatever it took to fix things, but I told her that she had made her decision, and now she had to live with it, and that the kids and I didn't need her anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my ex-in-laws. They were telling me that I shouldn't have said the things I said because she was already really depressed and that it wasn't kind of me to kick her when she was down. They said it wasn't necessary because she was already regretting everything she had done, and it seemed like I was trying to punish her more by telling her that the kids and I didn't need her. I wouldn't have cared about what my ex-in-laws said, but they've been very kind to me after the divorce, so I don't know. Am I the bad guy for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back and that the kids and I don't need her anymore? Update 1. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown me in the comments. I don't know how to express it, but it really means a lot to me to know how many people are on my side in this situation. It means even more to me that so many of you have identified with my story and reached out to say that things will get better. It's very kind of you, and I know things will improve. It's been 4 days since I posted and blocked Emma after our conversation, so she hasn't been able to contact me. This weekend she's supposed to come to see the kids and spend some time with them, so I don't know what's going to happen. Over the past few months since the divorce process started, she would only pick up the kids from my house and then go to her parents' house to spend the weekend with them, occasionally spending some time here with the four of us for some family activities. But mostly, she tried to stay away from me, and I was fine with that because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, however, is uncertain. I'm actually kind of worried about having to see her because her parents have been really upset with me, and they've said that the things I said were so harsh that she has ended up crying every time they've called her. Since I haven't responded to any of their messages, I really don't know what to say. But I do feel a little bad because I know Emma is a very unemotional person, and I managed to hit her in a painful spot because she's been crying so much. Even though she hasn't exactly been kind to me and our circumstances haven't been the best, I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life. I feel like she ruined everything herself. I did the best I could to make it work, but it's not like I could make the marriage work on my own without any help from her side. I don't know what to say, to be honest. Update 2. Emma came yesterday to pick up the kids, and we ended up having a conversation about everything that was said. It was obvious from her appearance that she was going through a really hard time. It showed on her face, and I found it very difficult to be cold with her. She asked me if I'd be willing to talk to her, even just a little, and I ended up agreeing. Once the kids were in their room, we started talking. She told me that she was really sorry for everything, not just referring to the recent months but to the last few years. It had been really hard for her to realize just how selfish she had been in the end, and she even said that she didn't deserve to be with me. She explained that in the last few weeks after the divorce, every time she went on a date or met with some man, all she could think about was how she wasn't sure if that was the life she wanted for herself. She felt guilty for throwing everything away. She had idealized it, but it wasn't as great as she thought it would be. When she realized this, it was already too late because she had already lost me. While she was speaking, she started crying again, and I tried to comfort her, but she told me it would only make her feel worse because it made her realize what kind of person I was and how badly she had treated me. It was bittersweet to hear her say these things about me because I would have really appreciated them when we were together, but now I'm not sure what to do with that. After a while, she told me she had decided to quit her job and move back here to be closer to her family. She also wanted to spend more time with the kids because she had already missed so much time with them. It wasn't worth staying away for such little money and sacrificing so much. The only request she had for me was that I not file for sole custody, as I had mentioned I might do. I told her not to worry. I had said that in the heat of the moment, but I had no intention of actually doing it because both she and I had always taken good care of our children. I knew they missed their mother, so spending more time with her would certainly be good for them, and I would support that. After we finished talking, she apologized to me once again and told me I was a good man. She also promised to try to be a better mother and a better person and thanked me for allowing her to talk to me after everything that had happened instead of just closing the door in her face. That touched me a bit, but I said nothing, and then she left with the kids. So, that was it. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. I thought she was going to come and fight with me, but this was nice and unexpected. She has apologized, and I'm not going to say that I forgive her and that everything is in the past, but at least we're on the right track now. I don't think I can go back to her. That seems unrealistic after everything that has happened, but the least we can do is try to raise our children in the best way possible and make it as peaceful as we can for them. Of course, it will be better for us too. Let's see what the future holds for us. Update 3. Well, it's been 4 months since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma has kept her word. A few weeks ago, she quit her job and moved back here. Since then, our children have been dividing their time between us. They spend half the week at my house and the other half with their mother, and so far, it's been quite convenient for them. Emma initially stayed with her parents but found an apartment a few blocks away. The kids are enjoying their 2 homes now. As for my ex-in-laws, we're back on normal terms. We don't talk regularly, but they apologized for bothering me when Emma was going through her crisis. They told me it wasn't my fault, but as her parents, they were really stressed and ended up blaming me in a reflexive act. Emma and I are also on good terms again. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're cordial and have kept things civilized. I'm also moving on slowly and trying to process everything that has happened so far. It's going well, and I hope it continues to improve. Update 4. It's been almost 7 months since my divorce, and I wanted to share a significant update. A couple of months ago, I met someone, and we've started dating. She's a single mother, and her children are around the same age as mine, which I think is quite good. It's been nice to date someone again, and I feel good about this relationship. My children, for their part, I believe, will be incredibly understanding. They've often told me that it would be okay if I started dating someone, that I didn't have to stay alone. So I've been seriously thinking about introducing them to my new girlfriend, as I believe they will handle it well, and it will be a positive transition for everyone. They might even get along with my girlfriend's children. However, this update is not just about that, but also about something that happened with Emma a few days ago. When Emma came to pick up the kids, she asked if we could sit down and talk. I thought she wanted to discuss something related to the kids, so I agreed. We sat in the living room while the kids were upstairs finishing packing their things. To my surprise, Emma told me that it had been a long time since our divorce, and now that we were on good terms, she would like us to go on a date to see how things go. She explained that since she came back to town, she hadn't gone out with anyone and hadn't been in contact with Melissa or her other friends. For her, it would be an opportunity to see how she feels and if we could rekindle what we had. It was a bit awkward, given what I've mentioned before, and I didn't know how to tell her, but I eventually told her that I had already met someone and was even thinking about introducing her to our kids. Although we are both in a better place and getting along, I don't think it's a good idea to try a relationship again. Emma took it calmly and thanked me for being honest with her, although she knew she felt a bit hurt by all this. But even if I hadn't met someone, I still believe that giving the relationship another chance is a bad idea. Update 5. I wanted to give a little update on how things are going. First, regarding my father, as many have been asking, he's still struggling with his health issues, but I'm relieved to say he's improving little by little. It's been a long and complicated process, but he's a fighter, and his improvement has given us all a bit of hope. As for my personal life, I recently introduced my children to my new girlfriend. I was a bit nervous at first, but I'm very happy to say that they received her quite well. They seem to get along with her, and that has been a great relief for me. Knowing that my children are comfortable and happy with this new dynamic gives me a lot of peace of mind. Additionally, I recently had the chance to meet my girlfriend's children. We decided to have a barbecue at my house so everyone could spend some time together in a relaxed environment. It was an amazing day. The kids got along very well, playing and laughing as if they had known each other forever. I'm very pleased with how things are progressing, both in my personal life and with my father's health. I really appreciate all the support and good wishes from everyone.